305 Fights, where champions rise.
305 Fights, welcome to the podcast, Massimo.
Thank you for having me.
It's so awesome to have you because you're coming from the perspective of being in the industry behind the scenes.
Yes, sir.
Give everybody a little bio and some story on you.
So about myself, I was born and raised in Venezuela. I came here to Miami about almost 10 years ago now to go to school. I did high school here. Now I'm doing my college here at FIU. I actually graduate next month, April 28th from FIU Business School. And yeah, I came here and always, for martial arts, always loved the sport, the different disciplines. I actually discovered boxing when I was here in Miami. I came here and I actually, a block from this studio is Fight Club, and they have a boxing class. And that's where I first discovered martial arts. And I took my first class, and that's where I first fell in love with the sport, you know? And yeah.
Like I said, your perspective is really awesome in the podcast. First off, you're a 355 team member, but you're in the industry with Reach Combat.
Yes, sir.
You have equipment and gear. You provide the cage, and you set up the whole cage and the whole arena for 205 Fights. How's that been, that experience? Play people how it is behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's been a crazy roller coaster, to be honest. So for Reach Combat, we started back in July, August of last year, around there. Starting with our products, mostly like these, like gloves, kind of like this, and also like the shin guards, kind of these, and everything that the fighters need just to train for their camps. That was like our first like business models with their gear. And then after that, when we first started working together, I noticed that there was a market as well for an MMA cage here in South Florida and in this area, since there's so many promotions and there's such a booming business right now, that we invested also in an MMA cage custom made from China, and it's great. It's brand new, and we used it for the past event, and it worked amazing. So yeah, we got to see actually all the different aspects of the business, not only from the gear side of helping out fighters with their gear in their camps, but also with promoters like yourself and events by helping with the cage and everything behind the scenes. So I feel like we've had a pretty broad view of all the different aspects of what this business entails, I believe.
Thank you so much for doing what we're trying to do in 205 Fights, is promote the martial arts, the combat sports, a platform for people to rise. So thank you much for that. And a lot of people don't know behind the scenes, like putting up the cage, making the safe for the fighters, the parameters of the cage, the referees, the gear. Yeah. The gear has to be sanctioned, has to be checked by sanctioning, Correct. The safety. So there's a whole industry behind this for the safety.
Yeah. There's a lot of little steps that go into an event and these things. Not only just the fights that people see, or people come to the events or see it on TV and it's just fight after fight, and it looks pretty simple, you know, but there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. And I think that with the cage, actually, I realized that I thought it was a lot simpler in my head than it actually is to do it in person, just getting the cage from China all the way here. And then for the events, just getting the people together to actually help me build it up and actually put it together and have it be in accordance with all of the commission's regulations and all of this. So that was a challenge at first for the first event. But I feel like we actually learned a lot after that, and we made a few adjustments for the past couple of events, so it's gotten a lot better. At first, I noticed that it took actually a lot longer to put together and to build than I thought, and a lot more people. So that was a bit of a challenge, but yeah, it was good.
Yeah, even for us, when we started the Fight League, we had everything in our mind without easing it. When you start doing it,
exactly,
the staffing and everything behind it, everybody sees the shows, but they don't see what's behind it. So we get to educate and expose that now.
Yeah.
So that's a great. And you are also one of the sponsors for 305 Fights. Your company, Reach Combat, also sponsors different pro fighters. For example, UFC fighter.
Yes. Omar Morales as well. He's from Venezuela, and we actually got in contact right at the beginning of the company around last summer, and he's been super helpful with us. He's been an amazing team member with our products. He loves our products, and he's been training his past couple camps with us, and he's been amazing. We're also looking to sponsor other fighters as well. We're actually in contact with a few amateur fighters here in Miami, and possibly also other pro fighters in the UFC and Bellator too.
He went from Bellator to the UFC, and he won his UFC debut, correct?
Yes, sir. So actually, yeah, he did. So before that, he went into the Contender Series, and with I believe his last name was Park, the LFA champion, and they threw him to the wolves basically on the first fight, and he knocked him out, got a contract, and he had his first fight in the UFC in December, 2 months ago, around there. and he in Korea, and he beat the guy, so he got his first official win in the UFC. He's in there, and super proud of him.
Awesome. And through you and stuff like that, we're scheduling him and other UFC fighters going to be
Yes,
on the
of course.
podcast. You said from Venezuela, and that's one of the things that in 305 we represent is Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Colombia. You know, Miami 305 is the melting pot.
It is.
And everybody comes for the American dream and to rise.
It is. Yeah.
Also, you are graduating FIU for sports management.
Yes, sir.
And talk to us about the management, behind the scenes in the management and whatnot.
Yeah, so I feel like, many of these fighters think that they just by fighting and just by having good performances in the cage, they can get to a good position with a UFC belt or in a worldwide stage. And that may be right for a few cases where they're unique in that way, but most of the time, fighters do need to have managers and agents to look out for them and actually fight for them in the background side with promoters, companies to sponsor them, and any of these people who actually are in charge of putting fights together. So there's a whole side of the business that is not only just fighting; it's also getting that fighter to the cage, which is also a big step in the whole process. As well.
That contract and the business. I saw a show not too long with the old school guys, Shamrock, Tito Ortiz, and they said that the MMA is about 80% business and 20% entertainment, and I think only 1% the actual athleticism. And we work with a lot of management companies. Like shout out to Matthew Dodge from Dodge Sports. And I believe through my experience is that if you want to make it, you're going to have a good management.
Yes.
Good management, someone you trust, and someone that's going to work
Yes.
for somebody that's going to work for you.
A good manager to actually get you the right matchups for you. Because many times these fighters come in and they think that they can beat anybody. I can beat anybody. I'm the best fighter in the world. I can beat whatever. That's not really true most of the time. If you're a 3-0 fighter, 3-2 fighter, you can't be fighting somebody who's 5-0 or 10-0 or so much higher than you in just experience level. So you need a manager to actually negotiate these things for you, find the correct matchups for you, and things that make sense for you to actually build you up and make you a star in this kind of
And
way.
find sponsors and contracts so you get paid.
Exactly, get your money. Because it's not only making it to be famous, because
No, it's a
doesn't pay the bills
100% business. You know, I'm glad you brought that topic up because I was talking to a young fighter. He's an amateur, wants to go pro right away because he thinks, okay, I'm pro, so I'm gonna start making money. No, not right away.
No, not right away, exactly. So many times you make some money at the beginning. Obviously, you're not making 6 figures, anything like that crazy, but I would recommend, obviously, if fighters don't have that much experience, obviously start out with an amateur career for sure. Even though if you get 3 losses in a row, it doesn't matter. It's an amateur record. It's not really that important for your future. Because, of course, your pro record is more important, and that's what actually gets you the money. So it's very, very important to get the experience in the amateur ranks before you go to pro, just so that you have a solid base and start actually making good paychecks once you get to pro. Not just making,
Yeah,
3 and 3.
I totally agree. Matthew Dodge has a gentleman that just won. Congratulations to Anthony the Genius Romero. He's 12-0, and he still wants him to get more experience because he's still young.
Yeah.
So to build that foundation. Talking about foundation, I love that we had this, and I love to have you, and hope to have you more, even as a co-host, because you're also a fan.
Yes.
So you're in the business, but you're a fan.
Yeah,
The
fan first, then business.
Yeah, boxing. That you practice boxing, jiu-jitsu, MMA. So let's get to it, because I was dying to talk to you about UFC 248.
This past weekend.
Yeah.
Yes.
What were your thoughts on that?
So, the 2 extremes. I had the 2 extremes for myself. I think that the entire card was amazing. Of course, the co-main event with Joanna and Weili was fireworks. That was a crazy fight. That was insane. I think that personally, it was one of my favorite fights, probably of the year so far. It was amazing. Both of them showed like amazing performances, incredible cardio. I thought that one of them would actually start to fade towards the end after the 4th or 5th round. Didn't happen. They kept fighting all the way to the end. You see, Joanna's injury was crazy as well in her head. And then the main event with Yoel and Israel Stylebender.
Yeah, let's talk about the co-main event, because you said something that I noticed also. They had to be so physically well prepared because in fact, Weili Zhang in the beginning, I think in the second round to me looked like a little bit got tired, which she never does, but she did travel through like 2 or 3 different countries to get here for the fight. So I know that had to affect it. And then I thought, oh, she's tired. No, she picked up even more. And I saw Giovanna physically and technically at her peak.
Yes.
And it was a fight that it could have been easily called a draw. You know, I'm looking forward to somewhere in the past that they're going to meet again.
Rematch, for sure,
Rematch again. I think Zhang is supposed to fight rematch the champion that she beat for the title.
Andrade, right?
Yes, for the title.
Yeah.
And then, okay, the Joe Romero and Sanya fight. What do you think?
Kind of a disappointment, to be honest. I thought that it was going to be a crazy fight just because of their styles. I feel like Yoel always comes out kind of a slow start, but crazy. He's very explosive. You never know what's going to happen. And obviously, Stylebender is Stylebender. He has his own vibe, his own way of fighting, which is crazy. And I thought that with those two guys in the cage, it would be such a crazy fight. But what happened was that they became into two counter strikers, right? So it just became a game of them just waiting and waiting and waiting. Who's gonna throw first? Who's gonna throw first? And then it never picked up, you know? Even when the first round started, excuse me, I think that Yoel, he literally started out like, boom, the bell, and you stood there for like a minute, just standing there. And I was like, this is a weird approach to a fight with Adesanya, you know? And also, Adesanya, I feel like, kind of fell a little bit into his bait, into Yoel's bait, because he didn't pick it up either. And he's not that type of fighter either. So he was also waiting on Yoel.
That's what I was saying before, is that was really strange to him, but it got into his head.
Yep.
And he started worrying about that tactic. And then go forward with what you were saying with Adesanya.
I thought that he would actually pick it up later on when he figured out that Yoel was playing that waiting game, but they both fell into that same game, and it turned into a very slow paced fight that I thought would go very differently. But I do agree that AZ won the fight, and Yoel should have obviously showed more. He is a challenger. He's supposed to come in there, and if you want that belt, to take the belt.
I think that Adesanya was waiting. Again, also because I think when he got hit with the punch and the kick, he respected it.
Yes.
He felt it.
Yes.
And he did the leg kicks. But then I think part of the fight is to adapt to the fight and create the fight.
Exactly.
And I think either of them should have done that.
Exactly.
And didn't do that.
Yeah, you're right. I feel like they didn't adjust correctly.
Dana White was really upset with the fight. And in fact, he said it might be the last chance for Joe Romero for a title.
For sure. I mean, unless he goes up to a different weight class, then for sure.
And Adesanya's going to fight now.
Paulo Costa.
Paulo Costa. Did you see him get thrown out of the UFC?
Yeah.
Because he slapped the translator for the Koreans.
Oh my God.
No, he wanted to jump the barrier.
Yes. I think that was Ortega.
Right?
Yeah,
Ortega was the one that slapped
the
translator for the Korean zombie.
That was weird, but okay.
Yeah, and it's true what Dana White said. When Adesanya and what's the name of the Brazilian?
Paulo Costa.
Costa meet, it is going to be a different fight.
Yes.
Because, and you know what? I'm interested to see, because Adesanya, I think he's great, but he showed that he needs to work on some things in this fight.
Yes. And I think that's mostly, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's mostly because he's a very seasoned kickboxer, and he has that background of that maybe like around 80 fights in kickboxing, and he came into the UFC like very recently, like 2-3 years ago. So he's very green in that way. But he's not green, but he's very green for the UFC.
You said that about him, about being a striker. So then you think Joe Romero, Olympic medalist in wrestling, would have wrestled?
Yes, and there you go.
And it didn't. It was really a odd fight.
That's what I was saying.
Let me ask you because we were talking before, and we were excited, and you have a bunch of information about
go ahead, of course.
The UFC Fight Night in Brazil.
Yes, tomorrow, this weekend in Brazil. So Kevin Lee and Charles Oliveira.
Correct.
Actually, just before I came into the studio, I noticed that Kevin Lee actually missed weight.
Wow, I didn't know that. Didn't make weight.
2 or 3 pounds overweight. So a part of his money goes to Charles Oliveira. The fight is still on, so that's good. It's not like it's canceled or anything. But yeah, it's them. And also, in the beginning of the card, they have Veronica Macedo from Venezuela. She's fighting as well.
Another Venezuelan fighter?
Yeah, she's fighting as well. She's opening up the card. So good luck to her.
Do you know where she trains out of?
I believe she jumps around a lot. She lives in Brazil and also in Portugal, so she goes around a lot. I'm not really sure where she's actually based out of right now, but yeah, she trains out of a bunch of different gyms and coaches. I feel like for the main event though, that's a very, very good fight.
Who do you pick to win?
Charles Oliveira.
Yes. Why?
By submission, because I mean, he's in Brazil. He's in home court. Obviously, there's no crowd due to the whole virus thing, but it's still a home court, home advantage vibe to him. And just his streak has been insane. Like he's gotten so many submissions. He broke Gracie's record for submissions in the UFC.
Yes.
He's just been on a streak, and nobody wants to fight him because they know he's very dangerous, super dangerous.
I think the only thing he has to look for is Lee's striking.
Yes.
That-
Lee's striking. You see that last fight with Gregor Gillespie where he knocked him out?
Correct.
That's dangerous. And also, I think it's the second fight working with Faraz Zahabi for Lee in his
Yes, and
corner.
Faraz Hobby is the coach of George St. Pierre.
Yes, that's like Mr. Ninja
Awesome.
right there.
And the fight is curious because you mentioned it. It's going to be in Brazil, but no audience.
Yes.
Because with the issues that are going on, they're going to film it just with the staffing.
Exactly.
Okay, you talked about the grappler and the most submissions. The co-main event,
Yes.
Damian Maia against Burns.
Oof, that's.
What do you think? Who you pick?
So I train out of fight sports, so I have to go for Burns, but but I definitely think that it's a very hard fight for Burns. I think he has an advantage in the striking over Damian Maia, but obviously these two guys being champions in jiu-jitsu, they're probably going to go into that realm of the fight. If it goes to the ground into jiu-jitsu, then I have no idea what's going to happen.
But I agree with you about the jiu-jitsu part. So I think the wrestling, who can push the wrestling, is going to control that grappling. Damian Maia, to me, I think is one of the best jiu-jitsu grappler in the UFC in history.
Yes.
And I think this fight is good for him. It's going to be different from the other fights. He's 42 years old.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like make it or break it.
For sure.
But everybody, and I think myself, has been picking Burns.
Yeah.
He's a little bit younger, a little bit better in the striking. So it's going to be...
He's been very active as well lately, fighting a lot lately.
Yeah.
So
I think it's some great cards. I think MMA combat sports is just growing and getting better. Before we end,
of course.
anything you would like to talk about or say about the combat sports?
Yeah, so actually about Reach Combat, we're actually based out of Miami, and anybody who has any needs for any combat training, if you're doing boxing, if you're doing Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, or actually building your own gym, we have everything on our website at reachcombat.com. You can get it there at discounts with 305 coupon code for sure, and yeah.
I think I'll tell you why that's very important. Being an instructor for 30 years and in martial arts for 40 years, when you train, you have to take into account safety.
Yes.
Even if you don't wear shin guards, let's say an MMA professional, you should train with shin guards. You should always have your mouthpiece on. You should have qualified gear that protects you.
Exactly.
Your environment, the mats, disinfect them, cut your toenails.
Yes.
Because what I notice, a lot of people, they're by the time these fighters go in, they're injured. They're fighting injured.
Yes.
They're fighting hurt, not healthy. And you got to be healthy and not injured to be able to fight.
Exactly. And when you're training, you have to use the right gear when you're training, not just when you're fighting. So make sure you're training with the correct gear, with everything that's good for you, so you're not injured when you get into the fight.
And I think another aspect that you brought upon to end with is educate yourself about management, about the business, about promotion, this whole other arena and field that they don't talk about. That's actually the most, not the most, but the reigning field.
Exactly. It's what nobody sees, but it's always there. So
yeah. It's great to have you. Looking forward to having you again.
Thank you for having me,
being part of
Elio.
a team.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Life, health,
Thank you.
success.